The ship was heavily loaded with much-needed manganese ore as she set out to sea. No one suspected as the ship left port that she'd never be seen again, nor that her legend would persist even 100 years later. Was it a storm? Was it a U-boat? Or was it something more sinister? Years later, 2 more of her sisters would go missing, and yet another would have to be scuttled. Was there a curse on these 4 colliers? Or was it simply the Bermuda Triangle claiming more ships? First of all, happy almost Halloween. Secondly, and most importantly, the Proteus-class ships are infamous among us ship nerds, as 3 of the 4 ships went poof, vanished right into thin air. In a bizarre twist of fate, these 4 ships would be infamous not for their wartime service, but instead the tantalizing conspiracies as to what happened to them. To start, let me introduce you to the squad. The Proteus-class ships were colliers, which are bulk cargo ships designed or used to carry coal specifically. The eldest sister was USS Cyclops, built at William Cramp & Sons as Yard Number 355, being launched on May 7, 1910. The second sister and the only ship in the class to not disappear is USS Jupiter, built at Mare Island Naval Shipyard and launched on August 24, 1912. The third and namesake of the class, USS Proteus, was built at Newport News Shipbuilding and Dry Dock Company, being launched on September 14, 1912. And the baby sister of the class is USS Nereus, also built at Newport News Shipbuilding and Dry Dock Company, being launched on September 10, 1913. All 4 ships displaced around 19,000 long tons, and all 4 had interesting stories, so we'll start with Cyclops. For Cyclops, her career began when she was placed in service on November 7, 1910. She operated with the Naval Auxiliary Service Atlantic Fleet, and as such she voyaged in the Baltic Sea from May to July of 1911 to supply 2nd Division ships. Returning to Norfolk, Virginia, she operated on the East Coast from Newport, Rhode Island to the Caribbean, servicing the fleet here. During the United States occupation of Veracruz, Mexico in 1914 and 1915, she coaled ships on patrol there and received the thanks of the U.S. Department of State for cooperation in evacuating refugees. With American entry into World War I, Cyclops was commissioned on May 1, 1917. She joined a convoy for Saint-Nazaire, France in June of 1917, returning to the U.S. in July. Except for a voyage to Halifax, Nova Scotia, she served along the East Coast until January 9, 1918, when she was assigned to the Naval Overseas Transportation Service. She then sailed to Brazilian waters to fuel British ships in the South Atlantic, receiving the thanks of the U.S. State Department and Commander-in-Chief Pacific. The ship put to sea from Rio de Janeiro on February 16, 1918, and entered Salvador on February 20th. 2 days later, she departed for Baltimore, Maryland, with no stop scheduled, laden with manganese ore. The ship was thought to be overloaded when she left Brazil, as her maximum capacity was 8,000 long tons. Before leaving port, Commander Worley had submitted a report that the starboard engine had a cracked cylinder and was not operative. This report was confirmed by a survey board, which recommended, however, that the ship be returned to the United States. She made an unscheduled stop in Barbados because the water level was over the Plimsoll line, indicating that it was overloaded, but investigations in Rio proved the ship had been loaded and secured properly. Cyclops then set out for Baltimore on March 4th, and was rumored to have been sighted on March 9th by the molasses tanker Amolco near Virginia, but this was denied by Amolco's captain. Additionally, because Cyclops was not due in Baltimore until March 13th, the ship was highly unlikely to have been near Virginia on March 9th, as that location would have placed her only about a day from Baltimore. In any event, Cyclops never arrived in Baltimore, and no wreckage of the ship has ever been found. On June 1, 1918, President Franklin D. Roosevelt declared Cyclops to be officially lost, and all hands deceased. There are some possible explanations for why Cyclops went missing. Submarines of the Imperial German Navy were known to operate in the West Indies, so the ship being lost to hostile action is considered. However, the German Navy denied any involvement or having even seen Cyclops, both during and after the war. Rear Admiral George Van Doors suggested that the loss of Cyclops could be owing to structural failure, as her sister ship suffered from issues where the I-beams that ran the length of the ship had eroded due to the corrosive nature of some of their cargo. Another possible explanation is her cargo itself, the manganese ore. It's much denser than coal and had room to shift within the holds even when fully laden. With canvas hatch covers, the ore would become a slurry when wet and enact the free surface effect, causing the ship to list and capsize in bad weather, which was in the area at the time. And finally, the juiciness we were all waiting for. The more unlikely outcome and conspiracies. Reports indicate that on March 10th, the day after Cyclops was rumored to be spotted off Virginia, a violent storm swept through the Virginia Capes area. While some suggest that the combination of the overloaded condition, engine trouble, and bad weather may have conspired to sink Cyclops, an extensive naval investigation concluded, quote, "Many theories have been advanced, but none that satisfactorily accounts for her disappearance." This was written prior to Proteus and Nereus both disappearing in World War II. Both were heavily laden with ore like Cyclops, and there's a theory that the Bermuda Triangle is to blame for the loss of all three ships, with the infamous stretch of sea swallowing up all three sisters with not so much as a belch to indicate where they went. However, we can't give that any credence since we have no idea what happened to Cyclops. The next sister is, to be frank, kind of boring. We all know we are here for the drama of it all, and USS Jupiter has no drama. It doesn't mean she wasn't important and didn't do great things, however. She was the U.S. Navy's first aircraft carrier, converted in 1920 into USS Langley, and also becoming the U.S. Navy's first turbo-electric powered ship. She was not only the sole member of her class to have a known fate, but also the only to be rebuilt as a carrier. After a later conversion to a seaplane tender, Langley saw service in World War II. On February 27, 1942, while ferrying a cargo of USAAF P-40s to Java, she was attacked by 9 twin-engine Japanese bombers of the Japanese 21st and 23rd Naval Air Flotillas, and so badly damaged that she had to be scuttled by her escorts. She was stricken from the Naval Registry on May 8, 1942. And that segues us perfectly into the story of Proteus. If you like my content and want more cool stuff to watch, please check out our new channel, Aviation Disasters Explained. The first videos go up for that channel on November 29th. Alright folks, let's look at the namesake of this class, USS Proteus. Proteus first entered service on November 11, 1913, making her first of 4 runs to Veracruz to coal battleships and cruisers of the Atlantic Fleet off Mexico. Proteus would complete 4 runs of men, fuel, and stores to the Philippines by August 4th of 1915. She would bring oil, coal, men, and stores for ships of the Atlantic Fleet at Rio de Janeiro and Montevideo from Norfolk on September 25, 1914. She was assigned to the Naval Overseas Transport Service, where she operated between Norfolk, Boston, and New York City for the next several years. She'd briefly spend time in the British Isles, Hampton Roads, Brest, France, and Cardiff and Barry, Wales in the back half of 1918 and first half of 1919. After that, she returned to Norfolk on August 6, 1919, and spent the better part of the next 3 years cruising from Norfolk to replenish the fleet in the Caribbean. She crossed the Panama Canal 4 times, delivering fuel and stores to Pearl Harbor in 1920 and to Callao, Peru in 1921. Her last supply run to the Caribbean ended at Hampton Roads on April 12, 1923. Proteus spent the remainder of her career in operations between Norfolk and Melville, Rhode Island. She was decommissioned at Norfolk on March 25, 1924, and was inactive until her name was struck from the Naval Vessel Register on December 5, 1940. But don't worry, her career does not end here. She was sold to Saguenay Terminals Limited of Montreal, Canada on March 8, 1941, and thereafter operated in the Canadian Merchant Navy. It wouldn't last long, as Proteus was lost at sea due to an unknown cause after November 23, 1941. There are no German U-boat claims for this vessel. One suggestion, albeit with no supporting documentation, is that her disappearance can be attributed to the elusive Bermuda Triangle, as she disappeared in roughly the accepted area for the triangle's boundaries. However, this is a big stretch. And I definitely didn't pull out my yoga pants for that one. Thank you so much to our amazing YouTube members and patrons. If you'd like to have some awesome perks like episodes a full day in advance, join our YouTube memberships today. And now it's time for our final ship in the Proteus class, USS Nereus. Nereus' story is rather short, cut, and dry. She was launched on April 26, 1913, where she would serve with the Naval Overseas Transportation Service. Detached from the service on September 12, 1919, Nereus served with the Atlantic Fleet until decommissioned at Norfolk on June 30, 1922. She was laid up there until struck from the Navy list on December 5, 1940. Sold to the Aluminum Company of Canada on February 27, 1941, Nereus operated out of Montreal, carrying bauxite from the Caribbean to aluminum plants in the United States and Canada. Nereus was mysteriously lost at sea sometime after December 10, 1941, while heading from St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands along the same route where her sister ship USS Cyclops had disappeared years earlier. Nereus carried a cargo of ore destined to make aluminum for Allied aircraft, and was presumed sunk after being torpedoed by a German U-boat. Yet again, the Germans did not claim this mark. Both her and Cyclops were thought to have been lost by German U-boats or possibly to storms at sea. However, in 1918, there were only 4 U-boats active off the US coast, and in 1941, only 5 U-boats were lost in the Mediterranean. The wreckage of Nereus, much like the Cyclops and Proteus, has never been located. Though all 4 ships more than likely found themselves at the bottom of the ocean, it is incredibly odd that 3 of them vanished. This fact has made them tantalizing and sensational for history buffs like myself, as well as conspiracy theory enthusiasts, as we all try to piece together what happened so many years ago. Regardless, in the case of Cyclops, Proteus, and Nereus, their entire crews were lost, and that is the most important thing to remember. Rest in peace to all of these brave men.